You're listening to Later with Mo Kelly on demand from KFI AM 640.
Vice President Harris, also presidential candidate for the Democrats. Kamala Harris just left the stage, formally accepting the nomination for president. And if you were to tune into just about any cable news network, the conversations are going on right now, having everything to do with whether it was a good speech, whether it was a great speech, whether it was a speech that hit the mark or missed the mark. And this is why you listen to Later with Mo Kelly. I don't do that. I'm going to give you something that no one else is going to give you. And it's real simple. It's not about whether you like the soaring rhetoric. It's not about whether you think that she seemed presidential. It's not about even whether it was a good speech, because I'm here to tell you, if you have already made up your mind that you're voting for Donald Trump, there's not a word that would have come out of her mouth which is going to change your mind. There is nothing that she's going to say or did say is going to make you think, oh, my goodness, I think I'm going to change my vote. I think that was a great speech, and that is going to make me donate to her campaign, and I'm going to vote Kamala Harris. There's absolutely nothing that she's going to say where you're going to give her credit. Let's be honest. And by the same token, last month, if Donald Trump said X, Y, and Z, there's no one who was inclined to vote for Kamala Harris was going to give any credit to Donald Trump's speech. I'm not here to tell you whether it was a good speech. I'm here to tell you that you're looking at it all wrong. It's about whether it was an effective speech. And effective speeches, there are data points to support that. And what is an effective speech? One which reaches not only the target demographic, but the demographic they hadn't reached before. An effective speech inspires people to actually act. An effective speech gains you something in a process. And it doesn't matter if she got up there and read the phone book. If we wake up tomorrow and the Democrats have raised more money, if we wake up tomorrow and the polling numbers are higher than where they were before, if we wake up tomorrow and Kamala Harris is in a better political position than she was prior to taking the stage, then it was an effective speech. And that would be inarguable. You don't even have to like it. It's about whether it is an effective speech, not whether you think it was good or not. Now, I could turn on MSNBC. They'll say, oh, it was wonderful. I could turn on Fox News, and I promise you, they hated everything about it. And they would say it was beneath the dignity of the office, or they wouldn't have liked the barbs. I already know how the spin goes. I've been doing this way too long. But that's not what I do. I'm telling you something to look for to give you a clear indication of whether the speech was effective or not. And that has yet to be determined. It's how Americans more generally react to it. Do you get some of the moderates and independents? Do you see a swell of support in a financial sense? If you do, well, that means the speech was good, because that's the whole point of it all. And if you notice while you were, and I get into the strategy of how a speech is laid out, I like to get into the minutiae of what it was trying to do. Now, tomorrow we'll find out whether it accomplished what it set out to do. But tonight I can talk about what I think it was trying to do. Did you notice during the speech that time and time again, Kamala Harris was quoting Donald Trump? That was very prosecutorial of her. She was basically reading back the transcript of the past 4 years of statements and actions as if they were in a courtroom and say, Mr. Trump, do you remember when you said X, Y, and Z? Oh, you don't remember? Let me show this to you. Are these your words? And she says them out loud and puts them in the court record. That's what she was doing. She was, as they were saying, prosecuting the case against Donald Trump. You're going to hear more and more of that. And tomorrow we'll know if whether that's an effective strategy or not. Not whether it's a good strategy, not whether you agree with the strategy, not whether you like the strategy, whether it was an effective strategy. Did it increase her position? And I can't even see the spin rooms. Well, I can see the spin rooms. I can't hear what they're saying, but I'm quite sure they're not talking about that. And that's why you listen to KFI, because you're going to get something that you're not going to get anywhere else. I'm not saying the speech was good or great or whatever. Honestly, it doesn't make any difference to me. I'm curious to see how it landed. That says everything. Because there are a lot of times I didn't think the speech, the presentation of the oratory of Donald Trump was all that spectacular. But it landed. And that made it an effective speech. That's all that matters. Donald Trump could have gotten up there and sang Mary Had a Little Lamb. And if you motherfathers started donating to him and he increased his poll position, well, you know what? That made it a great freaking speech because that's what you were waiting to hear. That's what you wanted from him. And that means he connected. Being a politician, elected official, is all about connection. Why do you think they always start off with their personal story? It's about connecting with you, the potential voter. What is it in Kamala Harris's past resonates with you? May it have been a story about her mother. May it have been a story about her growing up. May it have been a story about her father or her sister. Hopefully that something in that story would have said to you, well, Kamala Harris understands me because we went through the same thing. That's the whole point. They're just trying to connect. And whether it connects or not, we'll know tomorrow. Like I said, we were going to look at the viewership numbers and we would know whether people were tuning in out of morbid curiosity or whether they were tuning in because they heard something and saw something they wanted to hear more. And from what we saw the first day, more people tuned in the second day. The numbers stayed consistent over the third day. And it's reasonable to then surmise that people were appreciative or liked the presentation. Okay? That has nothing to do with what I like. It has to do with what the data shows.
You're listening to Later with Mo Kelly on demand from KFI AM 640.
And just a few more thoughts about the recently concluded speech by Vice President Harris, now officially presidential candidate representing the Democrats. I thought, because of published reports, that there was going to be a mystery guest. Most news sites were saying there's a mystery guest on the schedule for tonight at the DNC. Some people thought it was going to be Beyonce. I was thinking, like, what if they really went big with Beyonce and Taylor Swift? And I mentioned Taylor Swift because there was the meme which was put out by former President Trump saying that Taylor Swift had endorsed Trump. And Trump had responded on Truth Social saying, I accept. I expected her to address that on some level. Taylor Swift has not really ever put her foot into partisan political politics. She has implored people to vote, but she really hasn't stepped all the way into it, as opposed to Beyonce, who's done inaugurations. She's done things of a political nature. She's hosted fundraisers. So it would be no big surprise to see Beyonce part of this, but there was really no mystery guest. And then, Tuwala, you brought something to my attention that I did not consider.
The fact that this was the only finale within the DNC that wasn't preceded by a musical act, period. And they played Beyonce's music while her sister came out, kind of giving this feeling like, oh, wait a minute, is Beyonce coming? I'm wondering if things did not go awry, because how do you have Vice President Kamala Harris's sister speak and then not go directly to her?
If I remember correctly, we know that Ashley Biden directly preceded Joe Biden. And I think Usha Vance directly preceded J.D. Vance.
Yes.
If I'm wrong, someone will correct me, but I thought that was the progression. I'm going off the top of my head.
No, because she said, and now my husband.
That's right.
Yes.
That's right. To think that North Carolina Governor Roy Cooper, who is not a great orator, would be the lead-in to Kamala Harris, I don't think that was the original plan. No, I don't think, if anything, it would have been Harris's sister, Maya Harris, and then maybe a musical act.
Yes.
Like they did the night before with Tim Walz. And then you'd have Kamala Harris. I just don't see how Roy Cooper in any world would have been the intended introduction to Kamala Harris.
Unless they were like, look, we have to, as we know they have done, cut the musical act. She's going to speak for this amount of time. We already know we're going to have to get out of here on time. We got to cut the musical act. Who's in the wings that we can put up?
Right. Oh, we had Kid Rock, who was right before Donald Trump.
Yes.
So, there was precedent. There's no reason to think that, okay, we're going to set it off. We're going to really set the mood. We're going to set the tone. New North Carolina Governor Roy Cooper. That's what we need. That'll send the crowd into a frenzy. No, nobody said that.
Well, pump the brakes there, Chief.
Nobody said that. So something changed.
Even he said, I know, I'm not what you're looking here for. I just gotta say a couple things real quick. It's like,
and I don't think I don't think Vice President Harris was backstage and they weren't ready for her, or there was a tech issue with her microphone or something. I don't think it was that. I think it was something with the scheduling and order and trying to slot someone who either changed their mind at the last second or they just changed the order.
It was all over the wire that it was likely Beyonce going to perform, so this doesn't come out of nowhere. And I agree with both of you that it sounds like something went awry.
We may never know. This is speculation on my part, but it's not completely uninformed speculation because you just compare it to other conventions, other nights in this convention, other nights in the Republican National Convention. It doesn't make sense when you have the DNC and all the high-powered musical guests that they don't employ that same strategy leading into the presidential nominee when you did it for the vice presidential nominee, and it was done for both the vice presidential and presidential nominee for the Republicans. It just doesn't make any sense.
Heck, I have had to change the order of concerts I've produced wherein we were waiting for a specific act to arrive, didn't have them there on site, and had to say, who is here ready to go in the wings,
right,
and have had to make those changes last minute. So I know how quickly things can change on the dime when you're doing a show. Heck, even when we were broadcasting from Politicon and we had, it was which guest is ready to go.
At that moment.
Who do we have next ready to go? Bring them on. And that's just how sometimes you have to go.
But what still is confounding to me to think that the fail-safe was Roy Cooper. It's like, just say hypothetically, Beyonce. Yeah, thank you. You got it right. I don't think that when they were mapping this out, that I'll say the designated survivor, in the event that it all falls apart, that Roy Cooper was going to step up on stage. I don't think that was the one. I think something happened that no one foresaw, and they were scrambling, and that guy's like, who do we have that's in the house who can give us 4 minutes off the top of his head?
They could have gone with Governor Newsom, who's familiar with her, who knows. There's a lot of people that were in the crowd they could have pulled up.
Was he there tonight? I didn't see him. I didn't see him today.
Crowd, yeah.
Okay. Well, yeah, that would have made more sense. At least there's a California tie-in. I just don't see how they ended up with Roy Cooper.
A real familiarity, because from what we're watching this, we're like, so you two know each other how? How again?
Yeah, I didn't hear much of the speech, but I don't know how it connected on any level. From what I heard, I don't think that he even knew her all that well personally.
No, because he was talking about a time when they were both working on some housing initiative, and
that's not a personal anecdote.
They bumped into each other in the hall and say, "Hey, I'm working on that too." So now let me bring her up. What?
Yeah, and I don't know if that. Oh, before I forget, this is something I did want to make a comment on. And Mark Ronner, you told me something that I didn't know. I didn't know that was streamed live via Twitch.
That's for the young folks.
Right.
People younger than us.
No, I mean really young. We're talking about gamers for the most part. Gamers, streamers, folks who probably have zero connection whatsoever to presidential politics. They're not just generally checking for a national convention for a political party. What it says to me is they are really, really comprehensive, the Democrats in this regard, to making some sort of connection. Remember, we're talking about finding those points of commonality, making those points of connection with a much younger demographic. It's not just this election. It's about developing future voters. It's one thing to have them vote for one election in 1 year, but you want them to vote for your party, for successive elections, for the midterms of 2026, the next election in 2028.
Yeah, we'd like you to take a break from Grand Theft Auto 5 and listen to this speech for, 40 minutes?
Look, does it cost anything to stream? No. Did they get thousands of viewers? Yes. I don't know the numbers, but I'm quite sure they got thousands of viewers just out of curiosity. So as far as I'm concerned, it's free publicity. And now you'll see everybody doing it. It's another platform that you can get your message out. I think, don't correct me again if I'm wrong, I think some of the RNC went out on X, if I'm not mistaken. So these are new ways in which political parties are using that digital space to transform how they talk to different demographics. They're not going to only rely on a television broadcast. Look, if I'm 24 years old, Grand Theft Auto, I am not watching NBC, no disrespect, to watch a political convention for 2 hours to hopefully see Kamala Harris for 50 minutes of it. It's not happening.
What is their technology? Can you have like a little window with the speech while you're still playing League of Legends, or do you have to pick one or the other?
No, you can. You can do picture in a picture, it's called. Yeah, okay. You can do that.
Thank you.
You can. But I'm saying they're not checking for it on a traditional broadcast network. They're not.
Oh, no.
No. It's Later with Mo Kelly. KFI AM 640 live everywhere in the iHeartRadio app.
You're listening to Later with Mo Kelly on demand from KFI AM 640.
Politics today is so weird. It's almost like it's an extension of who we are personally. Like, we have to have this person win this office because it's part of our being. Like, people are so invested. Their personas are so invested with these politicians. They lose sight of just reality. And not a day goes by. I don't know about you, Mark, but not a day goes by, no exaggeration, where someone doesn't hit me on social media at Mr. Mo Kelly, at Later with Mo Kelly, and try to tell me what I believe, or tell me
that's my job,
what my politics are. And they say, Mo, you're just a something liberal. And it's like, and I talk to my liberal friends, they say, they have no idea who you are. Have absolutely no idea.
I miss the boring old days. In fact, somebody I knew in high school just unfriended me a few days ago on Facebook because I pointed out that something she posted was deranged propaganda. And it objectively was. There was not a true thing about it. And I'm not going to tell you what it was because I don't want to get into both sides thing here. But I really miss the boring old days when this wasn't at the forefront of our minds all the time.
If anyone actually knew me, they would know I'm a policy wonk. I love getting into the weeds of policy and talking about the different demographics who would benefit from this or suffer from that. Going back to the days of where you'd have these fights on Capitol Hill and pork, which would be put into a bill, and how that might impact the national debt. I was that guy who loved that kind of stuff. All that's out the window now. There's not a discussion of policy. Even in the presidential race right now, not a lot of policy discussions. Part of it is strategy. I know why they're doing it because I study this all the time. But now it's just, you're just rooting for a side. You know, it's, if so-and-so is running for president, they're evil. If so-and-so wants to do this, it must be inherently wrong because that side is evil. That's where we are right now. And it's so far from who I am. And if people actually paid attention to me, they would know that I don't and have never endorsed presidential candidates. I do not donate to candidates or their campaigns.
You picked the wrong week for that.
Oh, I know.
Every time I pick up my phone or look at my email, I am flooded with donation messages.
Oh, I get them all from everyone. It's like, I never signed up for your freaking list. How did you get this information? You know, and not a day goes by where someone says, you need to do this. No, I don't. No, I don't. You need to tell. No, I don't. I had someone hit me on my Facebook, personal Facebook. Like, have you talked about Kamala Harris and why she's ducking the media? Number one, I don't do leading questions. Number two, I don't take suggestions or requests. I'm not a DJ.
What?
And number three, I don't do advocacy, political advocacy journalism. If you actually knew who I was, if you watched any of the work that I've done on CNN and Spectrum, I provide political analysis. I answer the questions which are asked of me. I don't go on there trying to get people elected. If you ask me a question, like, for example, if someone asked me, and Mark Thompson, when I did his podcast, the Mark Thompson Show on Wednesday, I was asked about Kamala Harris in interviews, and then I gave a whole litany of history of expectations or the non-existence of expectations of political candidates and doing sit-down interviews. Here's the answer. It's not a thing. It never has been a thing.
What do you mean?
In other words, you don't expect a presidential candidate who is, I should say, expect or demand a political candidate to sit down to do a one-on-one when they're not even the presidential nominee. That is a get for the media. All media outlets would want that, but there's never been an expectation that just because someone's running for president, they have to do a sit down. If you've actually been following the campaigns, as I have, Harris has been doing interviews after every single campaign event. There are press gaggles after every single one. The only expectation is that you have the press follow you on the campaign trail. You will have reporters embedded with the campaign. And at the end of each campaign event, the candidate will address the press, and all that is out there. This whole idea, she hasn't sat down for a one-on-one. That's BS.
Well, one other thing to point out is that when she does these gaggles, pay attention to the questions that these guys are asking her when they finally get her. It's like, you've been whining about this and you're going to ask her that? It's some dumb stuff. It's very disappointing. I think our news media has largely failed us.
People are just repeating stuff, and number one, by and large, they don't know how the process works. Two, they don't know the history of covering political candidates and what the actual history was, the norms, the true expectations, all this about a one-on-one. You wouldn't have a requirement of someone sitting down for a one-on-one who's not even officially the nominee. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. Will she eventually? Yes. Is she supposed to beforehand? No, that's something that someone made up.
And they take great umbrage at it. If you've been paying attention to the New York Times, I really think they were in high dudgeon that President Biden did not give them a sit-down interview.
Yeah, and that's why, because they want they want the exclusive, and so they're going to shame you for not giving them the exclusive. That's how the business works, and as we go through this political season, I'll explain more of those things, and then you'll actually know how I feel about X, Y, and Z as opposed to being told how I feel about X, Y, and Z. KFI AM 640, we're live everywhere in the iHeartRadio app.
You can listen to KFI everywhere, like you haven't noticed.
KFI.
And KOST HD2.
Los Angeles, Orange County.
Live everywhere.